All right, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Hang on, I just got this new audio. I gotta try it at least once here. Oh wait, there we go. Okay, there's the confirmation finally on Facebook. All right, let's try out this new audio.
Fake news. Faker news. A media controlled by people pushing their own agenda. Fake news. Well, that stops here. This is the Larry Thorpe Show with all the fake news that dominates the media. This is your cozy little home for the truth. Larry Thorpe is a U.S. Army veteran and a serial entrepreneur. Originally from Chicago, he actually moved to Phoenix, Arizona a few years ago, looking for freedom from political tyranny. A constitutional conservative, Larry Thorpe, bringing value and holding the media accountable for the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle in. This is the Larry Thorpe Show.
Oh, that's so much fun. I like that. I gotta admit, I'm digging that.
Fake
Oh,
news.
okay. So, how we doing, Joe? We ready for the debate tonight? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's going to be a dumpster fire, but we'll see what happens. So I'm getting strapped in. If nothing more, it's going to be entertaining, Larry.
Well, it'll definitely be entertaining. What are you thinking about with this new mute button that they've installed? Who do you think's gonna get? Who do you think that's gonna impact the most?
um, well, I think we know what the money line would be if we were betting on this in Vegas, but if we had to cover those stutters,
Yeah, I think we know who the money line would be. The thing though, see, it's interesting going into tonight's debate because the bar is set so low. It's in order for either one of them to declare victory. This is the way that I see it, at least, and maybe you've got another perspective on this. But the way that I see it, in order for either one of them to declare victory tonight, Donald Trump really just only has to control himself. Okay, because everybody going into it, the way that I see it, they kind of expect that the moderator is going to be against Trump, right? So that's a given, right? So it doesn't matter right, left, any side of the aisle, no matter where you're at, you got to figure that the moderator is going to be against Trump. Okay, so going into it, in order for him to declare victory, I think all he really has to do is not break the rules. He has to act presidential. And for Joe Biden, I mean, really, I think all he's got to do is be able to give out 2 minutes of steady dialogue without any major gaffes. Is that really the bar that we have to become president of the United States?
well, Larry, um, we're not exactly setting the bar high in terms of statesmen here, but this is really uh, for Donald Trump to walk away from this, other than winning, he just has to make sure he doesn't get needled by the format and needled by the questions. So all he has to do is stay on message, but still be classically Trump, without stepping in it verbally, so to speak.
Well, the
And for Biden, Biden's going to do what Biden does. Biden is going to not focus on any of his strengths, but he's going to play to Trump's weaknesses, and those are ultimately going to be the hoaxes. Those are going to be the conspiracy theories. Those are going to be the coronavirus responses, because Biden really hasn't projected any real kind of policy for anybody. So it's more of, how does Joe Biden win this, to me, than how does Donald Trump lose this?
well, I mean, at this point, I think it's Trump's election to lose, isn't it? At this point, no matter which way you look at it, I think the election seems to be kind of steering our way. But the reality is, you mentioned that the bar isn't set high for statesmen, and in a large degree, I think that that's kind of what we've come to expect from Donald Trump. He's not a statesman; he's a businessman, and he's not afraid to say it. What do you expect? Like, what do you think we're going to see tonight?
Well, I think that what Trump has really zeroed in on over the last 2, 3 weeks is his message that he is not a politician. So, in terms of being, a polished, eloquent speaker, I don't think that that's really what Trump wants to play to, and I think that that plays into Joe Biden's hands. I think that Trump is really trying to narrow his message down to his key demographics that he needs to win with, because I think the middle is really going to be up for grabs, and I think that's part of his strategy tonight.
Well, let's hope that it works.
Agreed. Agreed. I think
And
that when it comes to Joe Biden in particular, Biden represents
hey,
a course correction from 2016.
I gotta
There,
I'm gonna jump out of this for half a second. I'm trying to set up our talk line here, and for some reason it's not going through. I'm gonna let you carry the show for about 30 seconds here.
sure thing. What's become remarkably clear to me is that over the last 2 years, the political left, the liberals, the progressives, and the Democrats have really made a course correction for what they thought they were going to do in 2016, and they had a choice to make for who they were going to run as president in 2020. Were they going to grab onto more of the fringes of the left, or are they going to try and grab some of that middle ground and go a little bit more towards center? And that decision was clear, was abundantly clear. Um, you saw Bernie Sanders lose in the primaries handedly, unlike what he did in 2016. And ultimately, what this means is Joe Biden is really not going to be much of a policy holder. He's not going to be much. He's really just going to be a guy who has a D next to his name on a ballot. And in a sense, he's just going to be the Democratic version of Mitt Romney from 2012. That's what I think um, the whole strategy here for the Democratic Party is going to be, because what we've seen over the last handful of months is that they're short on policy, but they're long on substance creation. So they're going to stick to that plan tonight. They're going to stick to that plan over the next 12 days. And anything that they can try and get to stick to President Trump, they're going to run with. We saw Joe Biden literally hiding in his basement under the auspices of a legitimate concern. But the fact of the matter remains the same, is that is a metaphor for exactly how the last 2.5 years of presidential politics and major candidate politics has turned out. Nothing is a shock here.
I appreciate you covering for me there. We have the phone lines open. Okay, the phone lines. If anybody wants to join in, it's 520-900 talk. That's 520-900 8255. And it looks like we may actually have somebody on the line already. Let's see what we've got.
Larry, hey, it's Tom, buddy. Glad to hear you, man.
Hey Tom, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Good. We missed you. We missed you here in Chicago, buddy. Big night tonight.
We're
How the
looking
heck
forward
do
to
we
it.
get this? How do we get the Biden email scandal into the public domain without it coming from Trump looking biased? It's a real deal, but I'm afraid if he overplays the hand, it's going to dilute the message. How do we get the message out there, man? It's legitimate. It's happening. It's the number one thing that we got to get out into the voters' minds right now. How do we do it?
So Tom, talk to me for a second, because where are you getting your information from? Let's start there, because I think that as we're coming up against the social media lockdown on information, as we're coming up against big tech censorship, and we're coming up against the media and all of the fake news that's out there, it's important to think about where people that are educated on what's actually going on in let's say real current events, and look at where they're getting their info. So where are you getting yours?
It's got to be a variety of places, man. I watch news, CNN, Fox. I'm on the Trib. I'm on Wall Street Journal. I'm listening to some of these the things that get posted on social media about what the FBI is saying about discrediting this whole Russian anti sort of what do you call it, disinformation game. It's got to be multiple sources. There's no one place you can go, and you got to formulate your own opinion.
I
So I, as
absolutely
a
agree.
reader and listener of multiple sources.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more with that. However, I've got to say, and the reason I asked you that is there's a couple of places that I really consider a go-to for me for really great
Well,
resources.
Larry, your Facebook page is one of my go-tos. I should add that.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Tom. I've had to restrain myself on Facebook quite a bit lately. Unfortunately, trying to stay out of jail as we get ready to launch this podcast and talk show has been brutal, to say the least. So I will tell you though. So, are you familiar with Dennis Michael Lynch?
No.
If you're not, you should be. Okay. So Dennis Michael Lynch has a fantastic app out for news and media aggregator. Okay, where they can streamline your content uptake, if you will, where you can just cover a large variety of topics very quickly, and all of them are well sourced and cited. Okay, so it's going to send you the article, where they got their information, and then it's going to send you a quick summary. So the app is fantastic. Download the app. I'm a big fan. Okay, second, Epic Times is ridiculously phenomenal. I get updates and alerts from Epic Times literally all day long. I mean, I think they're probably one of the best mainstream, well, I don't know if I'd call them mainstream, but even fringe media out there right now. That's just, their goal is the truth, to report the news. And obviously they're on the right side of center, but they're perfectly happy to call out the right in their endeavors. Okay, so I'm a big fan. And then the other thing is just like this, actually just making the contacts, making the connections, and putting the information out there. It's like you said, Facebook, even though they censor everything, having a network of friends and colleagues that are informed and educated and are working towards finding the truth is big, and it's important. Joe, you got anything to add to that?
What do you have on the background? What do you have on the background here? I see O'Reilly. What station is he on?
So right now I've got Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's a YouTube channel that is absolutely fantastic. So they're just Right Side Broadcasting Network. So I've got them playing, and we'll actually watch the debate on there. I figured we could support a commonly themed stream.
So,
Larry,
Larry,
cool. Thanks for notifying. Thanks for sharing that.
Joe, you were saying?
Yeah, my background, Larry, is really monitoring a foreign policy and monitoring economics and trade policy. So I take kind of an outside-in view, and I really look to see what the international news outlets are saying about the country. One of the places that I go to for a lot of information, and it's actually breaking cut of the edge. It is right there up front, is the South China Morning Post.
Yes.
They're pretty neutral as far as their China politics, and they're pretty balanced as far as their American perspective looks. But it is definitely outside the bandwidth of the U.S. mainstream media outlets at this point.
It really is incredible when you start looking at foreign news networks. Okay, it really is incredible, some of the investigative reporting and journalism that's going on right now. And it's funny because all you hear about from outside sources here in the U.S. is how horrible the foreign press, or how horrible the foreign perspective of America is. But the reality of it is, when you look at the social media from overseas, when you look at the foreign news, you see nothing but photos talking about Trump, come here. We love Trump. We love and look, I don't talk about Q on the show, and I don't talk about Q here, but there were lots of photos going on for a long time about the truther movement and dealing with seeing that kind of run the gambit for a number of months. Photos from all over the country talking about Q. It was impressive to see the unification of people that are just trying to A, get out from under being controlled, and B, find freedom. It's impressive to see, if the lockdown protests in Australia. It's impressive to see the Orange Vest movement in France. It's impressive, to watch the whistleblowers coming out of China. Watching the Hong Kong protests. All of this was just amazing, and all of it was really in support of everything that we've got going on here. It was,
Right.
I don't want to say inspired by, but I want to say akin to, you
It's
know.
absolutely a metaphor for what's going on in our country right now in terms of control of the message.
Well, when I look at Agenda 21, I look at the movement of the United Nations and what they're trying to accomplish or, tear down, however you want to look at it. But what they're really trying to do. And then I see everything that's going on around the world at the same time while we're dealing with everything that we're dealing with here. I really want to think that it's connected. And I want to think that we are entering into, something. You have to think not only is there a light at the end of the tunnel, everything that's been going on in this country, as we have watched the education system fall apart, as we have watched, this entire, every aspect of this country be pushed in upon, to seize control, to dumb the people down, to really just it's brutal to see. And you start to feel like the whole world is against you until you wake up one day and you look out at the rest of the world and you realize that you're not in the fight alone. And not only are you not in the fight alone, but the whole world is at war. This fight is taking place around the world in multiple countries as we speak. And I have to think that when it's over, okay, because we're about to see a backlash in this country that nobody ever. COVID-19 was one. Those lockdowns showed people. Those riots showed people. I believe it woke a lot of people up. I believe that we are going to see people show up to vote this year that have never voted before in droves. And they're not voting for the riots. They're not voting for lockdowns. They're voting for freedom. I mean, this 2020, you've got one choice. It's the American way or the destruction of everything we hold dear. There is no in between.
It looks like, you know, that is the choice of our time, and a lot of re-elections carry that kind of tone, but it's usually tone deaf. I don't think it's the case in this at all. I think that globally, not just here in the United States, that there's been a backlash to the globalism kind of idea, and people really want to go back to that, that simple nation state version where everyone trades with each other, but there's no lowest common denominator between 20 different countries. And I think that that's the case here as well. And I think if we look at the numbers here, I would not be surprised if we saw 63 and a half, 64, maybe 64 and a half million people vote in this election. Now, the question is who they're going to vote for. But I do think that that will be a key marker here for what people feel about in terms of 4 years to 4 years, not in terms of just presidency to presidency, because that in and of itself is it's a very key marking point for how the domestic policy is going to go, and more importantly, how the day-to-day politics of the country is going to go, because it is absolutely a metaphor for how people feel about everyday intrusion of the government in their lives, everyday intrusion of um, regulation overreach, changes to the education platforms, and the erosion of freedoms in so many different constitutional areas that we hold dear as a people and that we champion as a people because of the uniqueness of the American experiment.
You know, I think you hit on a really interesting point because this year has illustrated for people the importance of the Bill of Rights in a lot of ways. You know, it's funny when we were sitting on social media and you get into these debates and these discussions, and so all of a sudden people start commenting that don't know what they're talking about, and they say, "Oh, well, it's a living document, and oh, they're meant to be changed, and oh, those are amendments." Yeah, freedom of speech. That was an amendment, real good one. You know, the whole thing. People just don't understand. They don't understand why the Second Amendment is important. They don't understand the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment because it's there to protect the First. They just don't get it. People don't. Our education system in this country, public education, has gone. I'm and that's not just my personal opinion. On the world stage, the U.S. we used to be number one. We are no longer even close. Okay, that's nothing against teachers. That's nothing against principals. That's nothing. But we need to fix it. And the biggest thing I think we could do to fix it is to probably defederalize it and run it back to the states, and obviously give school choice. But that's a whole other discussion for another talk time. Listen, we
I like where you're going though, Larry.
hey, we probably.
100%.
Hey, I think we could probably do a whole show on that, but we probably don't have a whole lot of time. Okay, so I want to take a few seconds. You're wearing this shirt, and I've heard this term before, manland. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I am from Chicago originally, and I moved down to South Florida, kind of like you,
Okay,
where you moved to Arizona to get away from a lot of the things that plague Illinoisans,
it,
not just the snow,
it's
not
amazing
just.
how many people are running away from Chicago, isn't it?
Hey, I've told my friends the last one to leave is turn the lights out. So
They won't have to. They can't afford to
no,
keep the lights
tell them
on.
to shut off. Someone at ComEd's gonna get it. But no, I came down to Florida, and I started. I started with a friend of mine who's an Army Ranger. He's an entrepreneur. He kind of fits the cut of our jib very well. To start basically a refuge for masculinity. So
Really?
we have a 25-acre ranch down here in South Florida.
Okay.
And men can come out there and they can shoot their guns and fish and ride side by sides and do whatever they want to go do. And what the idea there is that masculinity is championed, it's not chastised.
Okay.
And to raise and reinforce the principles of true masculinity, which doesn't necessarily it doesn't exist in a vacuum where it puts other people down, or it downplays the importance of either women in our lives or people with other walks and beliefs in our lives. But the fundamental here is that American masculinity, which has been really the engine for almost 300 years,
Mm-hmm.
is eroding in a generation or two. And what me and my partners want to do is we want to reestablish and reinvigorate that, in a way that it enhances men. It brings men to the forefront of their responsibility in society and the responsibility in taking care of their families and taking care of their communities, and
So,
moving those principles forward.
so it's not that you're trying to, eliminate women, or you're not trying to separate. I can hear the comments later, like I can hear them going off, alarm bells in my head. It's not a pro man, anti woman. It's not. Help me here.
It is definitely not like No Ma'am from Married with Children. I'll tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Um, so no, it is absolutely not that. The whole point here is that if all of these different movements have legitimacy to them and they have a voice to them, why does masculinity not? Is it supposed to be? Is it supposed to remain silent within a group of people that are remaining silent? Absolutely not. So we
Well,
challenge them on that principle basis that if you have a voice, we have a voice. And there's a lot of people that walk around and say that masculinity is toxic. Really? Okay. Well, we can unpack that and we can say, well, all right, you have your ability to have your points of view, and you view how the masculine way of life is somehow infringing upon you, yet here you are, you have freedom of speech, you have freedom to get a job, you have a freedom that live and worship and love who you want. And so we're asking, what's the teeth to this? What's the merit to that? And we're saying it just doesn't exist.
All right, so hang on. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and oh, it looks like we've only got a second here. I'm gonna try and recap that real quick, is the way that I'm understanding it. Try and circumvent some problems down the road. But the way that I'm hearing this is that it's not something that has anything to do with cutting out women or being better than women, but it has to do with celebrating men for being men and masculinity for being for upstanding, strong, respectable men. Right?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going to get some audio here. We're going into the debate. Ready? Here we go.
But on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time.
Oh,
the
boy.
goal is for you to hear each other.
The rules
for
for the mute button.
People to hear every word of what you both have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the President's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the President thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic.
Really?
So, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
He doesn't have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to.
It's never happened before. He's going to spend the entire debate just trying to give me a
referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
And the only reason that we're there is because he cut regulation and red tape in order to be able to allow them to do that.
It could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics, and this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine, and we expect to have 100 million vials.
Using the military to distribute this is genius.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter.
But the American people don't want it, Biden.
And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease.
They projected it would be millions originally.
Who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic. It was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition,
oh my God, you're full of it.
Sure that we had 44 people that were in there.
I need a button for lie.
To get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said no. He said he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears.
Just
I
like
can't do
Hunter
that.
Biden.
And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have
0.6,
to
I think.
open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man
Forms I'm
going to bed
proposing
tonight to
would
reach
not
over to try to touch their out of habit where their wife or husband is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either.
China also ordered
It's China's
the
fault.
PPE in
They kept
February.
it from going into the rest of China for the
And
most
Biden's
part,
responsible
but
for
they
the fact that we
keep
didn't
it from
have any.
going out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing. You're xenophobic.
That's not
I
true.
think
He
he
said
called
he
me
was racist
racist
because he
even.
called it the Wuhan
And
flu.
because I was closing it to China. Now he says
No.
I should have closed it earlier. It
He's
just,
lying.
Joe,
Biden's
it doesn't
lying.
work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You
I
certainly
should have
did.
called
You
Pelosi,
certainly
and I
did.
did.
Yes,
I
he
talked
is.
about his xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about.
I'm
both of
searching
your
for an
different
MP3 for
strategies
You're
to
a
handle
Liar.
He
this.
thought I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating
Wasn't
with
that
Nancy
during
Pelosi and the rest of the
omnibus
Democrats and
spending bill
Republicans about what to
negotiations that
do
Nancy
about
Pelosi walked
the
out
acts
of?
they were
I think
passing
that's when that
for
occurred.
billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the name, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control.
Not everybody
More
says that,
control.
Joe.
But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity.
The Netherlands
to do it
definitely
safely.
didn't say it.
For example, schools, they need a lot
didn't
of money
close
to build.
anything.
They need to
Yeah,
deal
and
with
Europe is
ventilation
going back
systems. They
under
need to
even
deal with
after a
smaller
hard
classes,
lockdown for 4
more
months.
teachers, more pods, and he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I
and you.
think we have to respond to that.
And then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open.
Can't stand there and give a
Resources
speech.
Resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we can open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. So don't worry about it. Come on.
What the hell? Come on.
By the way, I will say this.
Serious? Did he really just say that?
To New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed. And they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's
Absolutely.
why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony. But he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us.
Isn't panicking?
He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us. Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we found out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money. As president and as somebody that knows most of those people, I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall Street.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the
foreign interference in the election is a big deal.
I don't think he's talking to
He's right about that. It is a big deal, and it needs to be fixed.
Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said.
But that's all he's saying. He's not saying how he's going to do it. He's not saying what he's going to do.
With regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks.
It's a dodge.
We are in a situation where we
he's going to say a bunch of stuff that everybody has to agree with, which are just facts.
Interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy. Well, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true.
Oh.
And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that
not correct.
everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties.
Not worried about Putin. I'm worried about Russia or about China.
When he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it.
Don't care about NATO either.
Asking the question, why isn't that being done?
I care about America. Talk about America, Joe. That's the country you live in. It's the one you want to be president of.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and
here it comes.
Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife, and you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and someday you're going to have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI,
Yep.
he said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia.
Biden thinks
Between
he's
the
tough on
sanctions,
Russia. Didn't him and
between
Obama
all
sell
of
them
what
the?
I've done with NATO. I've got the
The
NATO
uranium
countries
one.
to
Yup.
put up an extra 130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he
that's
was
true.
selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine.
Yup.
There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them. But you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money.
Yup.
And they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family.
You knew he had to
Joe,
bring
you
it
were
in.
Vice President
It's
when some of
amazing.
this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned.
Oh my God! Did he really just say that?
50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever.
Did you release the underlying
Number one.
schedules,
Number two,
Joe? No.
this is a president. I have released all of my tax returns. 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep
Excuse me.
talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man.
Nobody's
Joe, what's
surprised
that all
that
about?
Donald
It's
Trump has an
terrible.
office
All right,
in
gentlemen, I
China
want to
or
ask you both
Moscow.
some questions.
I have
Not
no
all of
He's
us,
a
but
businessman,
I'll
an
let you
international
both respond
businessman.
Very quickly, you just said you
Exactly.
spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have a
soon as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
don't
lot
have
of
a
people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying
Wasn't
your
this an
taxes,
election security
or you're
question?
paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said,
Oh,
well, I
my
only
God.
pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Very
So
quickly, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No
Nope.
president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because
All
the
right.
kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken. I mean, your brother made money in Iraq.
Let me-
Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal.
Oh, I wish I could pause this.
With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing. Number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy who made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
did
Trump,
deal with
let me
China. By the
ask
way,
my question
There's
to
a
you.
big difference
President,
between
just
doing
one
business in
point.
China and
Your
getting paid
son
off by
didn't
China.
have a job for a long time.
Correct.
Was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he
So
had
you
no
missed that
energy.
he
I'm going to
was
let the
doing
Vice President
something
respond to that
in
quickly, and then I need to get to a question to you. Very
No
quickly,
basis for
Vice
that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump.
We're not
this
talking
is
about
for
what
you.
he
Since
did.
you took
We're talking about what
office,
you
you've
did.
never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people.
Before
I was
he
thinking
decided to
about
run
it,
for
and I
president,
decided
didn't it?
I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his
China
brother,
requires
and his
a
other brother
foreign company
are
to be
getting rich.
domiciled in
They're like
China
a
and have a
vacuum
bank
cleaner.
account
They're
in China.
sucking
That
Okay,
the
is
money
President
every
Trump,
place
no
he
thank you.
longer
We
goes.
there.
do
There's
need
no
to move on.
surprises to
I
that.
do want to ask
Yup.
you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up only
That's exactly what's happening right now,
25%
The
of the
EU
world's
is
economy.
negotiating away
We
from a
need
free
to be
trade
having
agreement
the
from
rest
China
of our
because
friends
of the
with us saying to China,
US's foreign
these are the
policy.
rules. You play
That's
by them or
exactly
you're
what's
going to pay
happening.
the price for not paying by them economically.
According to a
That's
Forbes
the way I
article
will
written
run it.
October
And that's what we
22nd
did,
of this
upholding
year,
steel tariffs
the
and
U.S.
grains and other
deficit with
things when we
China
were
is the
president and
lowest
vice
since
president.
2011.
Let's talk about North
That's
Korea.
correct. There's
Let me
also
know, I
the
have to
Five
respond
Eyes
to that.
initiative.
Okay.
Great
Very quickly, and then we're
Britain,
going to move on to
with
North
$1.5
Korea.
billion from
United
China
States,
to
and one other
after
country
spending
that
10
is
minutes in
directly
office and being
overseeing
in
foreign
Air
intelligence
Force
with China.
Two. Number one. Number two.
So
there's a
consensus,
very
Biden is a liar.
strong email
He's
talking about
full of
your
it.
family wanting to make $10
Not to
million
mention the
a year
$150 billion
for
in tariffs that's been
introductions.
collected on
President
China
Trump,
in
on
4
China
years.
policy, though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and
Yep.
billions
No, it
of
was
dollars. I
tariffs
just gave
collected
New
from
$28
China.
billion.
New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion
It's
to our
absolutely
farmers.
true, Joe.
Taxpayers'
China,
money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer
Oh.
is? It's called China. China paid $28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they
Yup.
were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25%.
Well, he charged
on
China
dumped
to his
steel
personal bank
because
account.
they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President
Yup.
Biden, your response, please.
Our
Those
response
tariffs
is,
saved the steel
this is
industry
about-
in
there's
this
a
country.
reason why he's
Well,
bringing up all this
rebuilt
malarkey.
the steel industry.
There's a
UAW
reason for it.
endorsed Trump
He
for
doesn't want to talk
2020.
about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly.
Most of our families are doing better since Trump.
Family, you're getting hurt.
As long as we don't live under Democratic
You're sitting
governors,
at the kitchen
Biden.
table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires for the ball because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. In the middle class families like I grew up in Scranton.
We're dealing with lockdown problems,
in
Joe.
trouble.
We're not dealing
We
with
should be talking
economic
about your families,
problems.
but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
That is a
to talk
typical
about
statement.
North Korea.
Excuse me,
I
just
do
for
want
one
to turn
second.
to 10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political
Drilled
statement.
them.
Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks. The family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk
I'm
about
not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I
President
got elected.
Let's
get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times.
He's gotta be careful.
You've talked about
It's
your
too early to
beautiful
start
letters
the
with
muting.
him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test, and yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, He broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is
nobody said
25
anything
miles
about
away.
Barack Obama having
Millions
a good
and
relationship
millions,
with President
32 million
Mahmoud
people
and
in Seoul.
President
Millions
Castro
of
in
people would be
Cuba.
dead
No
right
one
now.
said
President
anything
Trump,
about
that's
that. They said
40
that
have a
seconds.
good
Thank you.
relationship.
Vice
was
President
international
Biden, to you.
progress.
North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug.
And you supported
thug,
nuclearization
and he
of
talks
Iran,
about how
Joe.
we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
Kristen, they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I
know
gotta
for
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know,
that's okay. You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump, we
with
have to
leaders
move
of other
on, 'cause
countries
we have
is
a lot
a
of
good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get
Yes,
to.
not
Your
a
Like
response.
saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe.
Actually, a lot of our businesses had a pretty good relationship with
The
Hitler even
reason
after he
would not
invaded
meet
Europe.
with President Obama is because President Obama
And the
said we're going
nuclearization
to
of
talk about
Iran, Joe?
denuclearization.
Ford was making
we're
their
not
tanks.
going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And
let's
it didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk
He
about
left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump. Okay, we do
They
need to move
left
on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And
need
in
to
fact,
move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can get
first
to all
2
of
or
our
3
I was
months,
stationed there.
tonight.
there was
Well,
a very
South Korea.
dangerous period in my first
While
3 months
Biden and
before we
Obama
sort of
and
worked
Obama
things
were in
out a little
office.
bit.
Okay.
There was a very they left us a mess, and Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time, and I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families. Under what he
A lot more
wants
than
to do,
6%
which
of the
will
population
basically
at
be
20 million.
socialized medicine, he won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President
And
Biden,
there's
yes,
our
this is
first
for you.
mic
Your
mute.
health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes
I
uninterrupted.
wonder if they flashed a light.
What
He
I'm
didn't
going
get
to
a
do
warning at
is
all.
pass Obamacare with a public option. It'll become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now. By
How are you going to
allowing
reduce
the
drug
Medicare
prices?
to
Under
negotiate drug
President
prices
Trump's favored
with
nations, we will
the
have the
insurance
lowest drug
companies.
prices in the
Thirdly,
entire world.
idea that I
You
want to
can't
eliminate
reduce
private
them
insurance.
lower
The
than
reason
that.
why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None. Zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and economic spillover. 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response to
It's
them?
ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children.
Every time
How
this
many of
guy
you
has
home
a
are
weak
worried and
point,
rolling
he
around in
breaks the
bed
fourth
tonight
wall.
wondering
Every
what in
time.
God's name
What's
you're going
that?
to do if you get sick?
Every time he
Because
has a
you've
weak
lost your
point, he
home
breaks the
insurance,
fourth wall.
your health insurance, your company's gone under. We have
They're
to
not
provide
playing
health
to it
insurance
this
for
time
people
though.
and an affordable rate. And that's what
I wonder if they are on the other
President
station.
Trump,
He was
Your
there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like you went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania
really
after he
bad
gets a
impersonation.
nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania, and he says, "Oh, we're going to have fracking." And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
Bravo.
He goes for a year. There
Bravo.
will be
We
no
have
fracking, there
we
will
do
be
have
no
a number of
petroleum.
topics we're
No,
going to
but
get
that's a
to.
big question.
We're going to get to. We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized
I have to
medicine.
respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your
Biden
premiums,
care.
deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroyed, and destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay, let's let Vice President Biden respond. Vice President Biden,
Very
your
confused
response.
guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security, Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get rid of, he tried to hurt Social Security years ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on. Mr. President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to
will
have time
boom
to talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars. Because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on,
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to the next question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
were
move
shocked.
on to my next question, gentlemen.
And we're devolving.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty. And more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President.
The Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President.
It's not in the Senate. It's in the House.
You're the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, and then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with these guys?
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these kids. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right, I want
If
to.
I
Yup.
get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And
You're
folks,
so full of it.
every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses
Yes.
and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP.
PPP
Money
had
is
nothing to
supposed
do
to
with
go to help
schools.
them do everything
Nope.
from organize
Not
how
one
they
bit.
can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they
This
can
is
hire
just a
more
jumbled
teachers, how they can
mess.
put ventilation systems in. They need the help.
He doesn't know what he's
Businesses
talking
as
about. He's
well
just
as
making
the
it up
schools
because he
need
knows the
help.
media's not going to
But
fact
this-
check him.
These guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
Excuse me,
immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly.
want
He
to
said
get
we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be
Absolutely
a state
true.
You said very
We have to
recently.
help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would
Okay,
be
President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick
no
response.
one-
Vice
$15 in New
President
York is not the
Two
same as
jobs,
$15 in
one job.
Virginia.
Be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour.
I
These
think
first
first
responders
responders
we all
get more
clap
than
for
minimum wage.
as they come down the street.
Not all
because
of them
they've
in
allowed us
private
to make
practice,
it.
actually.
What's happening?
Like
They
EMS?
deserve a minimum
Or
wage
EMTs?
of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk
No
about
solve.
immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about
Absolutely
families in this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here
Newsflash,
by
their parents
coyotes
didn't bring
and
them.
lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
merit.
how will you
But let
reunite
me
these
just tell
kids
you,
with their
Let me just
families,
tell you,
Mr.
they
President?
built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible
This
cages.
is a loaded
And they said,
question.
look at
Yep.
these cages. President Trump built them. And then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you
They
have a
built
plan to
cages.
reunite the kids
Yes,
with
we're
their
working on
families?
it we're
Trying to
very hard.
find their
But a lot
parents,
of
but
these
who
kids
knows
come
where
out
they're
without the
from or
parents.
where they
come
get.
over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this.
Their parents didn't bring them
Quick
here.
response, and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents.
No, they
They
didn't.
separated them at the border.
They
to make
came
it
with
a
child
disincentive to
traffickers,
come
and they
to
came.
begin with.
Yeah.
Real
Jeez.
tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to
did
that?
It. We changed.
Did not
They built the cages. Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who built the cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They
10
went down.
seconds,
We
and then
brought
I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail
She's
to
not gonna let
deliver
him get away with it.
immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record
we made a
deportations as well
mistake.
as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it
Is
very
he actually
clear.
trying to throw Obama
Within
under the
100
bus?
days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people.
That's because
And
you want their
all
votes.
Those so-called
That's right.
dreamers,
You're
those
pandering.
DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they're going to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal.
Uh-oh,
You say,
meds
no,
are wearing
Mom,
off.
leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do.
How does an illegal immigrant become a first responder? Serious question. Honestly, have no idea how that could even be possible.
Horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing.
Not
This is the first
statistically, Joe.
president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case
Hey, Larry.
that I
Yeah.
seek asylum
who
based on the
admitted more
following
immigrants to
on the
the
following
United States in
premise:
the first
why
3
I
years of their
deserve it under
presidency?
American law.
Barack Obama or
They're
Donald
sitting
Trump?
in squalor on the other side of the river.
It was Donald Trump.
President Trump, your response.
so
30
important.
seconds.
Yeah,
and then we'll
not
move
going to
Just
get any
shows
credit for
he has
that.
no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release
He just
is a
asked for people to
disaster.
follow the rules.
A
You know,
murderer
it's
would
not that
come in,
complicated.
A rapist would come in. A very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe.
do.
They never come back.
stayed away from
Only
that
the
one, Don.
really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay,
But they're
President
very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know
section.
the law, Joe.
A dangerous
Vice
route.
President Biden, your
Game he's
response.
playing there.
Know the law. What he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check
Check
it
it
out. They
out.
don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move
But
on
we don't have to
the
worry
next
about it because they
section.
terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it
Let's
anymore.
move
right.
on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin.
What was he gonna say,
Mr. Vice
no?
President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes sir, no sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what?
Oh, I thought he was going to do,
We've
thing.
constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion,
I was
not
waiting.
exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things.
Wealth, Joe.
Just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the
called out
ability
on
to
that
have
one.
wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did
Crime
such
bill.
harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception
That's
of
true.
Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln,
Since
nobody
JFK.
has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities, and then historically black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved it. Colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough.
That was a
people in
lie.
jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who were going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people sentences.
If you didn't have the law, you
over
wouldn't
1,000.
have the
very
1,000
law
people
he's
to commute
talking
the
about.
He didn't
is
need to
a law
commute
that,
'em.
in fact, initiated
He didn't
by
need to
Barack
commute
Obama.
them. He changed the
And
law
secondly,
and changed
we're in a
it
situation
forever.
Here where
Well, until the Democrats take
federal
office
prison system
again.
was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one
me
of
tell
these
you about
things we
this
should be doing,
horrible
there
law that I
should be
repealed.
no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail.
You're
because they have a drug
responsible
problem.
for
They
those,
should be going to
Joe.
rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
Oh
Why
my God!
didn't he do it
You
4 years
built
ago?
the system.
Why didn't you do that 4 years ago? Even less than that. Why didn't you
I
do it?
am
You were
not-
vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did-
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody's
Take a look
President
at the
Trump, I
laptop
want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue of
Excuse me,
race. We're
take a look
talking
at
about the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody-
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
you've
have
just
to respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very quickly.
there are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
got it.
exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The
All right.
laptop is Russia,
Yes.
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue
Boy,
on the issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate.
Russia would be trying
You've
to
shared
help
a video of a
Biden,
man
not hurt him.
chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that
They
kind
should.
of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't
and by
know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
According to the
Every
Wall
single
Street
one.
Journal, that was
Started
President
off his
Obama.
campaign coming down the escalator saying he's getting rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around
poor boys?
and made
I've never heard of the
everything
poor boys.
worse across the board.
Are you
He
talking about
says
sandwiches?
about the poor boys. Last
No.
time we were on stage here, he said, I told him to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up question.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying-
didn't say
John F.
I'm
Kennedy,
Abraham
but
Lincoln. I said
his
not
point
since
stands.
Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men, mostly in jail.
All right,
True.
let me-
And you know
let me
what?
a- let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because
More than
if
that
you
at
look
this
at what's
point.
happening with the voting right now.
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s
They all
and
know if
90s
they don't vote for
contributed to the
Joe, then they're
incarceration
not
of
black.
Tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers,
really
they're
is a
fathers,
racist.
they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change it since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think maybe the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But
Okay,
why
so-
didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to
Great
do
approach.
when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
didn't get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got
out-
nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
Quick response, and then we're
I
going to
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk.
Well, the air just
and
went
no
out of the room.
action.
All right, Vice President
Because
Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
That's a gaffe. That is a big
Chance.
gaffe by Joe.
Okay.
You got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes
right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running
already
out of
done.
time, so we got to get on to
Okay.
climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change, climate warming, the global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit the limited emissions will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC +3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC +3. Look, their real plan cost $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. Right. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more
All
questions.
right, sorry,
to
President
go.
Trump,
So
you
let's
lost
hear
me
from
on
the
that
Vice
one.
President, I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan is endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America are is the solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump, please respond, and then I have some follow-ups.
We are energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds. It's very intermittent.
Incredibly
A lot of
difficult to
problems,
recycle
and they
those
happen
too.
to make the windmills in both Germany and China, and the fumes coming up. If you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
who said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
It's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
All right,
Now
let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I
The
oppose
one
fracking.
clean energy that actually
tape.
could keep up with
I did.
demands would be
Show the tape.
hydroelectric.
Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Showed
he's
it last
flat lying.
Would you
Flat-
rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer.
Oh my God.
We need
That's 4 years.
other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it. But it's a transition.
He is such a
to
liar.
that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then
Excuse me,
we have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I
Good.
am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You
and
said
or
fracking.
oil
You
on
didn't say
federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they are making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute. Chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do you do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
Fall-
down?
I hate to say it, but that was a good
Would you
response for
close down
Biden.
the
By
oil
the way, I
industry?
would transition.
He
from
scored
the
some
oil
points
industry,
with that.
yes.
Oh,
I will
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
And here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question.
is he is
It's for
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get
Bravo.
to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context. But the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production. By 2050, total.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China
to
to
vote.
do it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our
rejoin
final
Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide
Ouch.
by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$3
about
Bye-bye.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian,
Yep.
people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right.
Speaking
Vice
fear,
President
I
Biden,
would have
same
loved to have heard
question
him
to
bring
you.
in
What will
something
you
about
say
Hunter
during
right
your
there, or
inaugural
something about
address
being
to
paid off.
Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm
That's
gonna
why
make
you
sure
need to
you
vote
get
for
there.
Donald Trump.
You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. Now, okay. Give me a second to gather my thoughts. I got to set up the phone lines here. While I do, yeah. Why don't you give us your thoughts while I do that?
Was that as thrilling for you as it was for me?
Oh my goodness.
Well, I'll tell you right off the bat here. The format was much improved over what we saw for this debate, or for the first debate, excuse me, and even over the town halls last week. I think both candidates were given their opportunities to really showcase their strong points as well as reinforce their policy positions. And I think the questions for the most part were fairly moderated and fairly addressed. However, when it comes down to substance, I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what Joe Biden is even going to do. I'm not going to claim any kind of perfect victory for Donald Trump. I'm certainly not going to claim a loss for him. I have to say that, this is like a 55-45 kind of proposition. But some of these, I think that some of these talking points are tired. I think that both. I think both Donald Trump and Joe Biden have been over reliant on um, some of the common hit points that are gonna resonate for a minute or two. But I don't see. Um, I just don't see anything of substance that Joe Biden has to offer. His presentation, if you will, was basically exactly like what we talked about 2 hours ago, as was Donald Trump's. So I don't necessarily see a big takeaway, a big swing for middle class America here, undecided voter here. I think that most of the attacks that Joe Biden lodged were they didn't land very well, and as both of us going back and forth, that some of them were borderline incoherent. They didn't stand up to historical fact. They didn't stand up to the test of time or what the candidates had even said. So there's a I think there's a falling off here. I think there's an atrophy to exactly what Joe Biden was trying to accomplish tonight. I think he hit his checklist of what he wanted to do, but I don't think he hit a home run. On the contrary, I think that there were some points where Trump could have reeled himself back in a little bit, and I think he was kind of losing losing a little bit of ground, but I think he more than made up for that in certain areas by talking about him not being a politician and really going after the 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration, as well as Joe Biden's 47 years of being a legislator. There's a lot to be atoned for that, and I think that that's going to, if anything, that reinforcement of that message with the voters on November 3rd is that's probably going to resonate the most. Donald Trump is not a politician. He doesn't speak like a politician. He doesn't act like a politician, and his policy positions have been consistent over the last 4 years. Give or take a couple of things. But in regards to some of the questions that were asked, um, I don't even know why they were on the radar, to be honest with you. Through most of the energy discussion, I'm just sitting there saying, really, I don't see where middle class voter is really going to make a decision whether or not we're going to frack or not. I realize it does have some importance in key battleground states, but I don't think that the message from Joe Biden tonight to the communities of color, the minorities of communities, was anywhere near as strong as President Trump's. And I think that the omission of any questions regarding women's rights and women's place in society and women's issues was an omission by this from the moderators and from the debate crew, to be able to further further identify the candidates and what they ultimately stand for. So I don't really see any real coherency on why Joe Biden is the overwhelming choice over Donald Trump. We can talk about decency all day long. We can talk about you're the American president all day long. But his silence on Antifa, his silence on Portland, his silence on Seattle, his silence on the killings in Chicago, his silence on a lot of different things speaks a lot louder than the words he chose to speak.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, you did say something that I'm going to jump in. You were talking about a 55-45 split, and I really don't think we're there. I think Donald Trump took this debate. I think we saw. I think we saw a Donald Trump from 2016 that we haven't seen in a while in the debates. The way that they approached this. I mean, you had a little bit of a back and forth between him and Joe, but when it really came down to it, he looked presidential up there. I mean, he held the floor. He kept to his time for the most part. I mean, there was a little bit of back and forth, but generally he knew his facts. He got some good pointers in, and I mean, I really think he dug into Joe Biden. Um, Joe pretty much went up there and said anything that he wanted, anything that he could at that point. And how many lies did we catch him in as we were going, just while we were live fact checking? Okay, I
Right.
mean, I've gotten my notes here in the Facebook commentary, link after link after link, just disproving things that Joe Biden had to say. And you know what? Donald Trump can't get away with that. Okay, the media doesn't, it holds him accountable, and even more. Okay, not he can hardly tell the truth, let alone tell a lie.
Yeah, true. Very true.
All right, so we have the phone lines open. Okay, if you've been watching the debate with us and you want to jump on, we'd love to hear what you've got to say. Okay, you can give us a call in now. The number is 520-900-TALK. Okay, again, that's 520-900-8255. We'd love to hear what you've got to say. You're watching the final presidential debate live coverage with myself, Larry Thorpe, and Joe Bargiel. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it right.
I do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right, and
So,
yep, go ahead.
well, being a Floridian, and recognizing the importance of the state of Florida to this election, um, there is a very strong contingent of Hispanic, Latin American residents and citizens here that are not swayed by the Democratic voice to that community. That community here, which has been a very tough nut for Democrats to crack, is anti-socialist. It's anti-fascist in a traditional sense, where and you're still only a generation or two away from the wet foot, dry foot people that came here from Cuba. You're talking about a generation or two away of people that fled from Castro. And you're talking about really only the last 30, 40 years of people fleeing Venezuela and coming here. Those are the real political asylees that the United States have traditionally opened their doors to, that under the Obama and Biden administration closed the door to them.
And
I have friends here from Cuba that received their green card and ultimately their citizenship through wet foot, dry foot, and these are productive members of society. And I think this is a
these
very
are the immigrants.
disingenuous thing,
These are the immigrants. The media won't talk about.
right?
This
Because they're
is yep.
staunchly right because their values are some of the most family-oriented, American-oriented values, and that's why they came here. No, we want to talk about crossing the Rio Grande. Why aren't they talking about crossing the shark-infested waters, the 90 miles from Cuba to Key West?
There
I
you
forgot
go.
about that.
There you go. And you know what? It's like you pointed out earlier. Donald Trump admitted more immigrants into the United States in his first 2 years in presidency than Barack Obama did in his. Okay, Donald Trump is not anti-immigrant. He's never been racist. He's pro-American. Americans don't have a color last time I checked. Okay, Americans come in all color from all parts of the world, and our ancestry and lineage is from everywhere. It's not. It's not a race. It's an ideology. Taking care of American citizens is what a United States of America president is supposed to do. And I'm sorry, but when Joe Biden gets up there and starts talking about protecting NATO, okay, and joining the Paris Climate Accords, and right, no, this is not what I want to hear from the American president.
Right. Exactly, Larry. This is what we talked about when we first started, and by the way, I very much appreciate you having me on your program. I'm thankful I got a chance to do this. Um,
Oh, we're glad to have
the
you.
United, Thank you. The United States, before the Paris Climate Accord, outspends on climate change prevention research more than all of Europe combined already. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to write a blank check of which there's no end, that we've already seen belligerents across this planet that already don't adhere to United Nations decrees, any trade deals, economic sanctions. There's always going to be illicit maneuvers in this world, and we have to realistically understand that it's in our best interest not to write blank checks at things we cannot ultimately control.
Well, and that, you know what? That's the thing about Donald Trump is he was never going to go along with these programs that are putting every other nation above us. Okay, that wasn't what the plan was. Okay, when we elected Donald Trump to president, it was an American first agenda always, and that's so much more than just immigration and trade. That's national security. That's defense. That's trade. That's immigration. That's jobs. It's
Exactly.
economy. It's so much more than just saying, oh well, the United Nations has an agenda. Let's go
Right.
along with that one. Oh, NATO's got a plan. Let's go along with NATO. No, Joe Biden doesn't have a plan. He has the plan that they've issued him.
Oh.
Okay, and he was asked tonight over and over and over again what his plan was, and all he could say was he doesn't have one. All he could say was that he doesn't like Donald Trump's. Okay, you heard him say about the coronavirus that he wouldn't have shut down the schools, or that he blamed Donald Trump for shutting down the schools and shutting down, or that the schools weren't open. But nobody held Joe accountable for saying what he would have done different. See, we've never faced the coronavirus before. We don't know what average yearly numbers are going to look like from here on out. Okay? We know under H1N1 what we did. We know what happened when Obama and Biden were in office. Okay? We know they used all of the nation's surplus in supplies, all of our PPE. They never replenished any of it. Okay? We know that's why we were short when this whole thing started. We know they left us for that, or with that, holding the bag. The reality of it is that Donald Trump surpassed every estimation of what was expected for COVID-19 in the beginning. Okay, when he shut down the borders, when everybody was against him shutting down the borders, and he did it. Okay, when he had the Army Corps of Engineers go and set up emergency hospitals, when he had the Mercy go to New York, they hardly even used that ship. The governor of New York, the Democratic governor of New York, signed an executive order forcing seniors back into senior care facilities, forcing them to take them when he had thousands and thousands of empty hospital beds. But you don't hear about that, and that nobody's talking about that anymore. Thousands of deaths that were completely unnecessary. Those are on Donald Trump's roster. When we look at 220,000 deaths, we've got five Democrat governors that signed executive orders like that boosted those numbers by tens of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Trump has to carry that roster. You know what? He did the right thing. He left the decisions of how to handle the states in control of the governors of those states. He followed the Constitution. He held his own powers in check. For the first time, they want to talk about and try and scare everybody, talking about a fascist dictator. Give me a break. Donald Trump is the single most powerful. During this term, he has had more power than any president probably ever. Okay, when the 50th state declared a national state of emergency, he could have completely disbanded Congress. He could have sent them home. Okay, he could have been a fascist dictator and taken over, but he didn't. He did the right thing. He honored the wishes of the governors because they were on site and let them decide what they needed and where he could help. And he sent the help, and he got applauded for it by them. Governor Newsom, Governor Cuomo, even Governor Whitmer at one point. She's a whole other topic of discussion. Oh my goodness. Her citizens took her all the way to the Supreme Court and won, and she came back swinging harder.
Hey, the people in Michigan can make that decision in a couple of weeks.
Oh my goodness. And you know, I've got some family in Michigan and they still don't understand it. They think she's a genius. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Some people just
Well, Larry, people are primed now to think that a strong centralized government is the answer to all of their problems. And nothing could be further from the truth. So when you have a president that has the sitting on the threshold of virtually unbridled access to all of the power that he could possibly wield under a national security um, and a national disaster, quite have you, to maintain that balance and to stand there and take responsibility for what happened during this COVID crisis. The talking points that Joe Biden brought up are long. They're dead. They don't hold any merit.
You
The
know,
simple fact is that when Donald Trump took action, he took action within the framework of what he could do with the power of his office, built upon what he had done for 3.5 years, not only in terms of economy, but in terms of national security. And that is a power of the president that I think that Joe Biden would flub. I think that his entanglements in a nation, in a globalist type of setting, would have mucked all of this up, to be quite honest with you.
hindsight is 2020, but the reality of it is 47 years worth of history in the government, and there's nobody up until last year that ever thought that he did a good job on foreign policy. Okay, the Secretary of State, Obama's Secretary of State, said that everything that Biden touched turned to a nightmare. All right, it's all right. So we've got a couple of minutes left here. We're coming up on 2.5 hours here, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I don't want to keep everybody on here for too long, but let's be honest. Um, we're wrapping up the show on the final presidential debate for 2020, and I've got to give it to President Trump. I think he did a fantastic job of not just erupting on Joe Biden for all of the lies that he was saying. Um, I think that he really did a good job of composing himself and holding his demeanor. Okay, I think that Joe Biden probably scored a few points with his frontline communities comments. Okay, for some of the states that are dealing with, like Michigan with Flint and their water supply, for example, and states and cities that are dealing with issues like that, I think that comment is gonna ring true, right? Um, the flip side of that, though, is that those families and those communities are probably back at work under Donald Trump. Those families and those communities can afford their bills and they can afford their gas under Donald Trump, which they couldn't under Obama. So if they can separate the two, then hopefully we're looking good coming out of this debate. As far as Joe Biden, we said what the bar was, and it was pretty low for him heading into this. He just had to be able to make it through his 2 minute commentary without making too many gaffes. Um, I do think his medication was probably wearing off towards the end there, but all right, that was a cheap jab. But I,
2.5 hours in, man, the tank
hey,
is a little empty.
and so you bring that up. Interesting story I caught while we were watching the debate, right? So Donald Trump had his personal guest at the debate. Okay, that he brought down was actually Joe Biden's former business partner. All right, so get this. Um, Tony, and I'm gonna mess this up, but Bobulinski, no, maybe not Bobulinski, Tony Bobulinski. All right, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's former business partner out of China was Donald Trump, and now whistleblower. So this is the original recipient of the emails talking about the big guy. Okay, he's the one that came forward and said, I've only ever donated to Democrats. I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I'm coming out against Joe Biden. I'm blowing the whistle. So you got to respect that, right? He's former business partner for Hunter Biden, okay? Former business partner for Joe Biden, and he was Donald Trump's personal guest at the debate tonight. And you got to wonder if the lighting, because Donald Trump mentioned the lighting during the debate. He said he couldn't see anybody that was in the audience, and I wonder if that was on purpose, because this article came out like moments before it hit my phone, moments before the debate went live. And I'm wondering if part of that was intentional, because you gotta wonder what that would have done to Joe Biden's mindset, his state of mind, to look out into the audience and see Tony Bobulinski, his former business associate, the guy who knows where the skeletons are buried, and is coming out and blowing the whistle on him. Oh, that had to be interesting. What do you think?
Well, it's definitely classic Trump, and I definitely think that the theatrics of it were probably going to be muted because, with the way that the current media coverage is, they're not going to give Trump any advantage whatsoever. So it's going to be things like this that will make its way out through non-mainstream sources that are going to really resonate tomorrow. And I'm just I'm jumping on Twitter after this, and I'm hashtagging Biden care. Let's do this.
It's funny you say that. Hang on. I've got that open here. Biden care is no, not trending yet.
Probably because the people who follow him were in bed probably 5 hours ago.
Well, debates 2020, debates tonight, and then we go to the NFL with Daniel Jones and Kristen Welker, NBC White News White House correspondent. Yep. She did good. I gotta admit, of the debates, this was hands down the best, and I've got to say she did really well. I was impressed. 'Cause she wasn't really given a lot to a lot to work with, and it's not like the bar was incredibly high, but yeah, I think she did good. I was really glad to be able to watch it.
Yeah, I like the format too. I liked how she handled both candidates. I think that this was the best organized of the three debates by a
Oh,
long
hands
shot.
down.
It's a lot like an NFL or a baseball game where the officials are the story of the game. You never want to be the story of the game when it comes to a presidential debate.
All right, so we've got this. Let's take a look here. All right. Here's Tony Bobulinski right before the debate. Let's see what we got. Can you hear that all right?
Good evening. My name is Tony.
I don't have audio on this on my side. No.
I served as a lieutenant in the United States Navy with high security clearance. My father and grandfather both served for decades in our country's armed forces. Since leaving the Navy, I've been involved in various successful businesses, both in this country and abroad.
Anybody that's listening, can you see?
To set the record straight about the involvement of the Biden family, Vice President Biden, his brother Jim Biden, and his son Hunter Biden, in dealings with the Chinese. I've heard Joe Biden say that he's never discussed business with Hunter. That is false. I have firsthand knowledge about this because I directly dealt with
Can you hear it?
the Biden family, including
I'm going to
Joe
YouTube
Biden.
directly.
I have also heard that Vice President Biden said on Tuesday that Senator Ron Johnson, the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, should be ashamed for suggesting that Biden family sought to profit from their name. Well, here are the facts I know.
All right, I'm getting told the audio is low on this. I'm going to restart it.
Emails, WhatsApp
There we go. How's
chats,
that?
agree- Since leaving the...
Try that again.
My name is Tony Bobulinski.
How's that?
I served as a lieutenant in the United
Perfect.
States Navy with high security clearance. My father and grandfather both served for decades in our country's armed forces. Since leaving the Navy, I've been involved in various successful businesses, both in this country and abroad. I'm making this statement to set the record straight about the involvement of the Biden family, Vice President Biden,
his brother Jim Biden, and his son Hunter Biden in dealings with the Chinese. I've heard Joe Biden say that he's never discussed business with Hunter. That is false. I have firsthand knowledge about this because I directly dealt with the Biden family, including Joe Biden. I have also heard that Vice President Biden said on Tuesday that Senator Ron Johnson, the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, should be ashamed for suggesting that Biden family sought to profit from their name. Well, here are the facts I know, and everything I'm saying is corroborated by emails, WhatsApp chats, agreements, documents, and other evidence.
So he's got the
And
proof.
the American people can judge for themselves. I brought, I guess, for record, 3 phones that spanned the years 2015 through 2018. These phones have never been held by anybody else besides myself. I was told this past Sunday by somebody who was also involved in this matter that if I went public this information, it would bury all of us, man. The Bidens included. I have no wish to bury anyone. I've never been political. The few contributions I have made have been to Democrats. But what I am is a patriot and a veteran. To protect my family name and my business reputation, I need to ensure that the true facts are out there. In late 2015, I was approached by James Gilliar, whom I had known for many years, about joining him in a deal which he said would involve the Chinese state-owned enterprise CEFC China Energy and what he called one of the most prominent families in the United States. I was informed first by Gilliar and then by Hunter Biden and by Rob Walker, who was working with the Bidens, that the Bidens wanted to form a new entity with CFC, which was to invest in infrastructure, real estate, and technology in the U.S. and around the world. And the entity would initially be capitalized with $10 million and then grow to billions of dollars of investment capital. After months of discussion, I agreed at Gilliar and Hunter Biden's request to become CEO of the entity to be called Sinohawk. Sino representing the Chinese side, Hawk representing Hunter Biden's brother Beau's favorite animal. And between February and May 2017, we exchanged numerous emails, documents, and WhatsApp messages concerning Sinohawk and its potential business. On May 2nd, 2017, the night before Joe Biden was to appear at the Milken Conference, I was introduced to Joe Biden by Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. At my approximately hour-long meeting with Joe that night, we discussed the Bidens' history, the Bidens' family business plans with the Chinese, with which he was plainly familiar, at least at a high level. After that meeting, I had numerous communications with Hunter, Walker, Gilliar, and Jim Biden regarding the allocation of the equity ownership of Sinohawk. On May 13, 2017, I received an email concerning allocation of equity, which says 10% held by H for the big guy. In that email, there's no question that H stands for Hunter, big guy for his father, Joe Biden, and Jim for Jim Biden. In fact, Hunter often referred to his father as the big guy or my chairman. On numerous occasions, it was made clear to me that Joe Biden's involvement was not to be mentioned in writing, but only face-to-face. In fact, I was advised by Gilliar and Walker that Hunter and Jim Biden were paranoid about keeping Joe Biden's involvement secret. I also had a disagreement with Hunter about the funds CFC was contributing to Sinohawk. Hunter wanted $5 million of those funds to go to himself and his family, so he wanted the funds wired directly to an entity affiliated with him. I objected because that was contrary to our written agreements concerning Sinohawk. He said, referring to the chairman, his father, that CFC was really investing in the Biden family, that he held the Trump card, and that he was the one putting his family legacy on the line. He also said to me on May 17th, 2017, that CFC wanted to be my partner, to be partner with the Bidens. During these negotiations, I repeated to Hunter and others that Sinohawk could not be Hunter's personal piggy bank. And I demanded that proper corporate governance procedures be implemented for capital distributions. Hunter became very upset with me. CFC through July 2017 was assuring me the funds would be transferred to Sinohawk, but they were never sent to our company. Instead, I found out from Senator Johnson's September report that the $5 million was sent in August 2017 to entities affiliated with Hunter. Tomorrow, I will be meeting with the Senate committee members concerning this matter, and I will be providing to the FBI the devices which contain the evidence corroborating what I have said. So I will not be taking any questions at this time.
Bravo.
I will not be taking questions at this time.
We're going to ask them anyway. Can you tell us a little bit more about this evidence that you're giving to the FBI?
The evidence sits on these 3 phones. I don't want to go into anything any further. This will all be discussed with Senator Johnson and his committee, and the American people can decide what's fact.
Who paid for you to be here? Who paid for your expenses to be here?
Thank you. I paid for my...
Wow. All right. All right. You know, they could have just saved... we could have saved the hassle and started the arrests, and I mean, they knew where everybody was tonight. What a way to go down in history. Could you imagine a perp walk off the presidential debate?
Wow, that would have been... I would watch that for YouTube for years to come, assuming YouTube is still around.
Oh my goodness. That would be amazing. All right.
Man.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming on here, and I think it's about time I wrap this up.
Larry, thank you very much.
Hey. All right. We'll do it again soon. Take it easy.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Hey, for everybody out there, thanks for joining us tonight, and I'll see you next time.